Hello and welcome to Creighton in the Community. My name is Joyce Bunger and I'll be your host. One look around Creighton and you'll see that the landscape is changing. And here to talk about it is Mary Duda, the Sustainability Coordinator at Creighton University. Now Mary, one of the first things I asked you was Sustainability Coordinator. Is that something you grow up to be, a Sustainability Coordinator, or are all organizations having them? Tell me about your role.
It's getting to be a more and more organizations are hiring somebody with the title Sustainability Coordinator or manager or something like that. No, it's not something you grow up being. Maybe kids today do. Mm-hmm. I certainly didn't. My background is in chemical engineering. And I work in environmental health and safety. That's my primary position, and it's a part of facilities management. And it's kind of grown out of there. Part of environmental health and safety is protecting the environment, shipping hazardous waste, maintaining chemicals, things like that. And working in facilities, you know, part of what we do is all the energy on campus, all the water, steam, air conditioning, all that kind of stuff. So my job has kind of grown out of, my sustainability coordinator job has grown out of my primary position as environmental health and safety.
Well, let's talk about each of those things.
Okay.
Give me an example of, at Creighton University, what you focus in on, like for, you mentioned, I think, energy. What are some things so that we can put our arms around it?
Well, 10 years ago, 15 years ago maybe, Creighton started an energy awareness committee. Before this was something that people were even concerned about. And those people are looking at how do we make people aware of wasting energy and do things better. So I got involved in that early on when I first started working there.
What were some of the first things you did?
It was little things like noticing, hey, that light's on in the middle of the day. Why does that need to be there? There's some outside the library, for instance, that are on all the time. Why? Can we shut those off? Little things like that. And as it's grown, it's been, hey, when you leave at night, make sure you shut your lights off. One of the earlier things we did was an energy siesta, they called it.
I was just thinking about that.
Yeah. So it was once a month on a Friday afternoon, hey, everybody at 11 o'clock, shut your stuff off. Shut off your coffee pot and all your lights. Anything you're not actively using, shut it down. And it was a little competition between departments of, it was a percentage because obviously none of our buildings are the same size, same amount of people. So the winner would get an energy siesta fiesta. So we'd go up there with a nacho cart and give people a little party for, hey, thanks for saving energy. So
people just weren't aware of it. I do remember when that was going on, and you just have really hard habits to break.
You do.
Yes.
You do.
And okay, so what are some others? You have the energy. You said water was one.
Water. We actually have hired a person in facilities management. I don't know how many people are aware of this. He walks around at night checking to see if people left their lights on, and he shuts them off.
Get out.
Uh-huh. And he is saving the university money by doing that. He pays for his position by doing that.
My.
And he leaves them a little note saying, hey, guess what? You left your lights on.
Well, guess what? I've never gotten one of those notes.
I'm glad to hear that. Neither have I, so yes. I'm glad to hear that.
What are some other areas you monitor?
Water consumption.
Like, for instance?
The Harper Center and a couple other buildings have the sprinklers, and they have monitors that tell you, hey, it rained last night, and shut themselves off so that they don't give too much water to the turf and stuff like that.
And I know that there also is, it doesn't take long to drive by campus and you see the solar panels.
Right.
What's been the impact? Can you talk about that project a little bit, about the solar panels?
Sure. One of the impacts is obviously they're producing power for the university. It's about 100 kilowatts. But the bigger impact is the teaching and the learning that's going to come out of them. You're going to talk about the energy technology majors. That's what those panels are designed for. They come apart so that students can get up there and take things apart, put them back together, learn how they work.
Oh.
And it's Creighton students, and it's also going to be Metropolitan Community College students coming by, being able to take these things apart, looking at the inverters, looking at how you attach them to the panels, everything. So that's the bigger impact, is teaching students. And it's a really neat thing.
We were talking to, I was in reviewing for the show, I noticed that transportation has certainly impacted the zip car, which the purpose of the zip car is to do what?
It's to allow students or any community member, anybody in Omaha can
Rent it, borrow it,
rent it.
rent it.
And you need to be a member. So you sign up for a card and you can rent it for as little as an hour or up to 2 days. So if a student is on campus and doesn't have a car, they can check it out, do a Target run, go run down to the old market for dinner, even check it out for the day and go explore eastern Nebraska. So we're hoping to keep some students keep their cars off of campus, reducing the impact of people driving back and forth to campus, and reducing the need for more parking lots.
And I know that bicycling is another thing that's really, really key, that there's a big emphasis on bicycling.
We've noted, well, the city has painted what they call sharrows on the road on Birch Street for bicyclists to have a lane on Birch Street. And the student group the Green Jays have really gotten active this past semester on bicycling. They're looking at how can they store their bikes over the winter. They think one of the impediments to people bicycling is that they don't have anywhere to keep their bikes over the winter, that it's safe and out of the elements. So they've really been working with facilities on where can we store our bikes, how can we encourage more students to bicycle. They want to have, with the community bike shop, a partnership where they can learn to work on your bikes. You can, if you work 20 hours at the community bike shop, you earn a bike. So the students are really pushing the bicycling, and it's a good thing.
Students seem to be really, really actively involved and very committed to this. Are you having as much luck with people like myself, the staff and the faculty, to raise their consciousness about the environment? And
in the last year or maybe 2 years, it's really taken off. The faculty and staff are really picking up a lot more classes being offered, a lot more people coming to our meetings saying, hey, how can I help? And you know, our guy that walks around turning off lights is turning off less lights.
Why do you think that is? Why are people suddenly more concerned? Is it just kind of a overall commitment on Creighton's behalf, or?
I think it's a little bit of everything. It's, you know, the people at Creighton, I think, are concerned about the greater good in general. So if by shutting off a light they can help save some energy, save some power for somebody else, they're willing to do that. It's little things. And part of it, I think, is a little bit of peer pressure that, hey, everybody else is doing it, I need to do this too. So we're getting a lot of impact, I think.
So it isn't always, it's sustainability really, and in preparing for this show, I remember you saying it's all about stopping waste.
Yeah.
And so it's, and let me also ask a question. I know that I did a show on sustainability a while back, and we talked about on campus the Wareham building, how that probably is one of Creighton's best examples of sustainability. Can you talk about that with me?
There's a lot of neat things about that building. It's an old building, probably 100 years old, so it was repurposed. And not only was it repurposed, but we got to save its historical value. It is on the historic register, so we got to save its historic value. The parking lot next to it was an old plating facility, and the EPA gave us a $250,000 grant to clean up that site and put in the parking lot. So that was a huge deal. There were only 3 grants given in Nebraska that year, and we were one of them. The building, they were the first ones to do single stream recycling. They have geothermal wells. They've got lots of big energy efficient windows for natural light. And it's just a really neat.
And there's not very many garbage cans in that building.
Well, that's how we do single stream recycling.
I know. Talk a little bit about single stream recycling.
Single stream recycling is similar to what you would do at your home. So it's everything, plastic, paper, everything but glass, because the city doesn't do glass either. But what they did is when they came through and said you were doing single stream recycling, your trash can got taken and you got a recycle bin in its place. And that includes me. In my building, Father Schlegel has the same thing in his office. With the thought being that 70% of what you create is recyclable. The other 30% is true trash, paper towels, Kleenex, your banana peel from
apple cores,
stuff like that, which personally I don't want in my desk anyway. So the thought is there's a central trash can in all of the offices. You get up and go for a little walk and get some exercise and throw your trash away. So it's going well so far.
It is going well. Well, I'm glad to hear that. That to me personally was one of the hardest things to get accustomed to.
Yeah.
But then I was realizing I was sustaining myself, getting up and having exercise and so forth.
And we're in most of the buildings now.
In most of the buildings.
It started off in Wareham 2 years ago, and now almost all the buildings on campus are single stream recycling.
I know sustainability is very, very important at Creighton, and it's infiltrated it has infiltrated the entire university, and that's probably because of Father Schlegel. I believe he had one of the first Priuses, hybrid Priuses in the city of Omaha. Tell me a little bit about the President's Climate Commitment.
Father Schlegel was the first president in Nebraska to sign. It's the American College and University's President's Climate Commitment. And with that, he committed us to reducing our carbon footprint, having a plan sometime in the future to become zero waste, and figure out our greenhouse gas analysis. So a consultant is right now figuring out how much greenhouse gas this university produces, and then that's our benchmark, and every year after that we have to take a look at how we're doing and see that we are in fact reducing the amount that we produce. So that was a big deal when he signed that.
Absolutely. I would expect that sustainability takes partners from the outside as well. Are there any significant partners that have kind of helped us in our sustainability efforts?
We talked earlier about the solar panels, and our big partner with that was OPPD. They're providing some of the money for the solar panels and for the Windspire turbines that will be installed in the Lead Center, and part of it helps them too. It doesn't just help us. I mean, we have the panels, but they have committed to producing 10% of their energy from sustainable sources by 2020. So this helps them a little bit to get to that. What it also does is these are panels that their customers can come by and take a look at, kick the tires, as we say, see, is it something that we can install in our place of business, or just use them as demonstration projects. So we're really glad to have OPPD helping us and partnering with us on this project.
Thanks, Mary. Indeed, the landscape at Creighton has changed from the solar panels and the windmills to the green spaces. When we come back, we will talk with Dr. Jay Leiter to talk to us more about how the students, the faculty, and staff are learning more about the environment. I'm being joined by Dr. Jay Leiter. He is an assistant professor with the Communication Studies Department at Creighton University. First of all, I have to ask, how did a communication studies major or professor get interested in the environment, or was it the other way around?
Well, two ways. One is that I have a personal interest and commitment to a lot of issues of sustainability and environment. But also, my research area is about community decision-making and the ways in which citizens, elected officials, stakeholders, sometimes business and industry come together to make decisions about their community in a deliberative process, interested in deliberative democracy and those sorts of things. And at the moment, lots of communities are wrestling with issues of environment and sustainability. And if they're not, sometimes they're looking at other issues related to public health or transportation or education, and trying to figure these out by thinking about them in terms of sustainability and environment. And so those are the ways in which my interests come into research and teaching. But I also have a commitment to things like food systems and living sustainably and living in a home that hopefully is energy efficient and these sorts of things.
Have you always been interested in the environment? And where I'm going with this is a generational thing. Environment is kind of a new thing to we oldsters, but I think that your generation grew up being more in tune with the environment.
And I would say that's true even more so now with the students that we see, but not really. I mean, I think in high school and college I had some interest in it, and it wasn't until I went to graduate school and started trying to understand political processes at the local level that I really saw when questions of environment are coming to the forefront for communities. And so, for example, when I was in graduate school, I studied a water conservation initiative in Seattle. Even before that, when I was in Omaha doing a master's degree, I was working with an institute called the Joslin Institute for Sustainable Communities and thinking about how these kinds of things are being influenced in the decisions we make about our communities.
Let's talk more about that. I know as we were preparing for today's show, you mentioned that you're doing work out in some of the small towns in Nebraska. Take me to that small town and tell me what your role is and what you're encountering.
Yeah, I've had the good fortune of working with the Joslin Institute, again, since I've returned to Omaha after graduate school, and they were funded for a couple of projects by the Nebraska Environmental Trust. The first one was a series of sustainability leadership workshops where we literally went to communities, 22 of them across the state, and held workshops about sustainability leadership. So it was not only questions about how we come to know sustainability in the context of making decisions about our communities, but what sustainability is.
That's good. I think that would probably be the first thing they're going to sustain a what?
Exactly, and especially in rural communities, what sustainability is really hard to figure out because they're so dispersed in population. Oftentimes they're dependent on one industry. Their healthcare services are spread thin. So asking these questions, and we did that for about 2 years. And then after that, the Nebraska Environmental Trust funded a second project, which is underway now, a series of conversations about critical resources in Nebraska. We just had one in November at Creighton University, and there's 3 other partnering institutions, University of Nebraska-Lincoln, Central Community College in Grand Island, and then Western Nebraska Community College in Scotts Bluff. And each of those places will be convening larger conferences where we'll be asking, having conversations about land, water, food, energy, and materials is the 5th one. So the work that I've been doing is really trying to figure out how to build the capacity of the entire state, and I know that's a big task, but be part of that effort to have people more informed about issues of environment and sustainability to make better decisions about their communities.
So choose a small town, and if you want to call it, make up
How
the
about
name.
Broken Bow?
I
like Broken Bow.
I like Broken Bow.
Right.
Been there.
Okay.
Talk about how you got to Broken Bow, what you encountered at Broken Bow, and how you laid the issues on the table. Because again, I know I sound like a dinosaur, but you hear the term sustainability, sustainability. What does that mean, and how do you make that relevant for someone in that town?
It's a great question, and it's a difficult question, and one that I don't have an answer to yet. But when we got to Broken Bow, we were in a meeting with, if I'm not quite right on this, it's pretty close. The mayor was there, I believe the director of the library, a person from the radio station. I think there was a public health person there, and some other local city official types in Broken Bow, with also some folks from the surrounding region. On the town square at the extension office, having a discussion about what it means. Now, every community in rural America is experiencing, or at least perceiving they're experiencing, some level of hardship because their young people are fleeing in droves. Economic uncertainty is an issue, and then you pile on top of that, issues of environment with regard to water and agriculture and all sorts of things. I think that what communities will ultimately try and figure out how to do is partner with other communities to work together and work more efficiently so that we integrate healthcare systems, for example, instead of 2 communities holding the burden of funding a number of services, maybe they would work together. We've seen this in school consolidation. I'm not saying this is the only way, but most of the time the conversations about sustainability end up with a conversation about how do we work with other communities like us who are also suffering. And so this is where a communication professor gets interested, because it ultimately then rests on their ability to cooperate, in face-to-face ways, meetings and that sort of thing, to make decisions that are really hard about who gets what and how they get it.
I get it. So sustainability doesn't have to just do with saving the planet. Sustainability has to do with maintaining the integrity of that community so that it can sustain itself.
There are lots of definitions of sustainability, and one that comes out of one of the original ones comes out of a UN book called Our Common Future, and it basically goes like, doing things to our planet today that won't harm future generations, something like that. The institute where I work thinks about sustainability as the balance. This is the Joslin Institute for Sustainable Communities, as the balance between environment, economy, society, technology, public policy, I'm blanking on one. But the idea is it can be both a decision-making model, but also a way to think about indicators or ways in which we might measure moving toward more sustainable conditions. And part of the idea is you have to know where you are, and then how do we make better decisions that puts these things into balance.
So where are you in the process with Broken Bow?
Well, that's interesting. They are coming back, hopefully, many of the folks who've been there. And Broken Bow is an example. There's all sorts of communities that are being worked with through this project. But hopefully they've been to these smaller workshops, which are about 15 a piece, and now they'll be hopefully coming to our larger conferences. Because again, the idea is if they're going to work together in a regional way, the more we can facilitate processes where they come together and talk about these issues, the more capacity we'll build for them to make these decisions.
Since a key part of our show today is on energy and resources, is that an easy topic to address in these small towns, or is that one where you have to like start at the beginning?
It's interesting. I think energy is a very understandable place to start. Sometimes other types of topics aren't quite as easy. Food systems or water systems.
Healthcare, I would think, be very political.
Well,
what about the gas line coming through Nebraska? Is that something that's...
we at this conversations conference, we had people who are very much in line with what I would call an environmental commitment, and they would advocate for the pipeline. Lots of people are against it. So that particular issue, I think, is a very important one. If you're thinking about the Panhandle, there's an economic gain for if that pipeline comes through. So again, I'm not sure I'm the best person to advocate for any one position. My interest is in figuring out the ways in which people can go through these types of difficult decision-making processes and make the best decision that they can feel comfortable with.
I know another topic we talked about in preparing for the show was, I think you said that perhaps I would be surprised at how many classes at Creighton do include this sustainability or this energy type of conversation. Give me some examples.
Well, I bring that up because it's really important to think about with education and the students that come in here. They can do what they want to do in their majors, but find lots of ways to learn about environment along the way, environment and sustainability. And so I know English has a number of courses in composition and literature that touch on issues and topics of environment, about how it's been written about and how we write about it. There's a green chemistry class. That's not actually the technical name for it, but I know Aaron Gross teaches a class in green chemistry.
Tell us what green chemistry is.
I don't know. You should take the class. But Dr. O'Keefe has a class that he has called God is Green, and it's about Christianity and the environment, which is a very interesting thing for Creighton. There is a course in sociology and anthropology. There are courses in rural sustainability, but also food systems that have been taught for a long time. And then in the spring, I'm teaching a course called Deliberation on Sustainability, which it's a deliberative democracy class. How do we facilitate these processes? But the issue that we're going to choose to deal with is a sustainability issue here on the Creighton campus.
Well, I do want to talk just a second about the student group, the what are they called? The Green Jays. I love it. We have our Blue Jays, now we have Green Jays. Tell me a little bit about that organization.
Well, I'd say it's an up-and-coming organization that's doing quite well. About 2.5 years ago, another faculty member who's no longer here and I convened a group of a bunch of students from different organizations, Residence Life, the old Environmental Science, Environmental Science Club. There were students working in the freshman leadership program in Cortina, the Creighton Center for Social Justice, CCSJ, has a sustainability track. So lots of interest.
Lots of scattering.
What we tried to do, and I'm not sure how successful we are, but I think we've got some momentum, was to say maybe there's a way that we could have a clearinghouse organization that would really serve to coordinate a lot of the activities. A lot of different groups were doing similar kinds of projects. I don't know if we're doing that very well, but Green Jays has become a thing now that's recognizable as this is what they do. In the first couple of years, the idea was to really think about leadership and how we want to structure the organization to keep it going. Student organizations, their students graduate, and then we need to work on leadership.
Sustainability.
Exactly. So now what they've decided to do was to organize the Green Jays around project areas. So they're not really an awareness or social movement kind of group. They they bring people in who want to work on a project. And so I think they're being successful now at targeting, doing certain things, working on that for a while, and then when they've had some success, they might choose something else.
Can you give me some examples of specific projects the students are working on?
Yeah, they've chosen some really interesting ones. The first one that I can think of is that they've got a bike share program. They've taken a lot of the bicycles that have been left on bike racks over the years, and they're refurbishing them, and they're going to be painted a similar color, maybe green, I'm not sure, and students can use these bikes on campus whenever they like. They've also been working hard to get the community garden and composting programs going, and their big project, which will launch in the spring, is which is funded by the student organization, student government, will be a Ban the Bottle project, where the research is pretty clear that water bottles are an environmental disaster, the ones that we purchase, and so they want to encourage students to be committed to using a reusable water bottle instead of buying water bottles on Creighton's campus. So those are just a few examples.
It's amazing. And when we come back, we'll learn about the new energy technology majors that are going to be offered at Creighton University. Would it surprise you to know that Creighton University students are playing a pivotal role in protecting the environment? Some new majors have been offered at Creighton University, and we're going to talk about them today. I'm here with Dr. Michael Cherney. He is a professor, and he is the interim director of the Energy Studies at Creighton University. And it's been changed from majors to studies. Tell me why.
Well, it's originally the program was called an energy technology program. When we first drafted the grant for this project, that we were planning on also including some vocational education as part of it, which would have been a new area for Creighton. In the meantime, Metro Community College started up a program in sustainable energy, and what we decided was we'd much rather use our resources to complement what they were doing. And so we're actually creating two courses as part of the new program, where it's combined with Creighton and Metro students together. One of those classes where we focus on solar energy in terms of photovoltaics will be taught on the Creighton campus, and the other one where the focus is on convective heating will be taught on the Metro campus.
Another example of Creighton's partnerships with the community. I like to hear that. First of all, let's just do a quick review about the various programs that are offered at Creighton University.
Well, there are really three programs that branch into sort of this sustainability area. The first of these is the atmospheric science program. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be really, through our program, we've gotten some additional funds, and we're going to be able to enhance what's going on in that program.
Because it's been around for a long time.
Yes, and it really has two focuses. One is more along the lines of basic weather prediction. The other is a more advanced course of study, which really worries about computational models, modeling what is going to happen next. And
such as predicting storms?
It's even more than predicting storms.
Like what?
It's really building up the models so that you can say, how much energy is Omaha going to need tomorrow? And how much energy is it going to need an hour from now?
So it's like actuaries of environment.
In a sense it is.
Wow.
And it's actually really important, because as we bring more renewable resources online, that and these can go in and out depending on how the sun is shining and how the wind is blowing, we need to know how to bring the traditional resources back online. And it turns out to get things going, we really have to have good forecasting, both on the 1 hour basis and on the 1 day basis.
Okay, so we've got atmospheric sciences.
Right. The second program that's already in existence is the environmental science program. There again, they go off in three different directions. First of these is a good partnership with atmospheric science. The second is a good partnership with biology. And the third is a course that really tries to bring in the human aspects of environmental science. If we are going to really make change happen, it's you can have good science, but it's being able to communicate with people and have people understand and have people make life changes. These are the things that are really going to make change happen.
In another segment of the show, we talk with Dr. Leiter in communication studies, and he talks too about public policy. So is that kind of what you're talking about, going into communities and actually encouraging people to make changes in their lives? Is that the human aspect?
That's one of the human aspects that's in the environmental science program. That's also one of the aspects that's in the new energy program.
So let's talk about the new energy program.
Well, the new energy program is actually something that is both innovative in terms of what is taught and the way that it's taught.
Mm-hmm.
We're offering 2 new majors, a Bachelor of Science in Energy Studies and a Bachelor of Arts in Sustainable Energy. Both of these programs really share a common core, and the core is what's really exciting. These courses are all interdisciplinary courses. You'll have courses that are taught by an engineer and someone from English. You'll have a course that's an engineer and someone from journalism and mass communications. Someone from history and someone from physics doing a course together. And so it's really addressing the problem from the way the world really is. It's not we live in these segmented pieces, but what we do is we live in a world where it's all mixed together.
Well, take me back to the beginning. How did you get everybody around the table, or who did you choose to be around the table?
Well, first I want to give credit to the people who made this possible. Father Schlegel has really shown a commitment to sustainability on this campus, and a big part of why we're able to do as much as we are is he's given back all of our grant overhead money back into the project. Most universities would have taken that 40-some% and used it elsewhere. The second thing, though, is we've got to give a lot of credit to our congressmen. Lee Terry and Ben Nelson really helped make this happen for Creighton. Although this was a grant proposal that we really got support from our delegation in Washington. The third piece is the Omaha Public Power District, that again we're having contributions from them to make this program happen, all of which are truly substantial
Wow.
contributions.
It's a huge coordinated effort, yes. So when you went to, you now have the funds to grow this program. Who was around the table to help build it?
Well, what we did is we started with a set of focus groups. We worked with faculty, we worked with students, and we worked with people from area businesses. What we discovered was actually we as faculty members aren't nearly as creative as the people in business and our students are. That we learned a lot about what potential future employers would really like in terms of our graduates. And what we learned were some things that would make sense not just to our program, but to programs across the board. What they wanted were people who would be lifelong learners, people who could work well in teams, people who could communicate well both in a written fashion and an oral fashion. Also, they wanted people who were willing to be innovative, people who were willing not just to follow a procedure. And so what we did is we started to build from there. Well, in creating the curriculum, what we saw was there were 2 universities in the United States that seemed to match very well with what we were trying to do. The Carnegie Foundation had put out a report that described how engineering education should really be done in America. And lastly, we looked at our own Jesuit tradition. And what we saw was at these 2 outstanding schools in the Carnegie report and in our Jesuit tradition, there were really these common themes which encouraged us to address problems not as individual pieces, but as a common whole. Again, it's sort of the way that Creighton tries to do its education. It's not we just worry is this person a good physicist? Is this person a good chemist? But what we worry about is the whole person. It was also really interesting that the pedagogies at all of these places came across in very, very similar ways. And what we were able to do was really take something that we could go back to the spiritual exercises of Ignatius of Loyola and say, this is really a good way to learn. And the whole idea is, it's not creating a curriculum where everybody marches in lockstep. What you do is, first, you get people to identify what you want in the experience. And that draws out some sense of commitment from the student. Then what you have is the teacher takes on a whole lot more of the role of the retreat director, where it's listening to what they want, but not always giving them what they ask for, but giving them what they think is going to move them forward. The next step in the process is getting the student to be actively involved in the process of learning. And the final thing is to reflect on the experience, to say, what did I get out of the experience? What more could I have gotten out of the experience? And really, should I be moving on, or is it more valuable for me to go through a similar experience again?
Let's talk a little bit about the typical student. Are you seeing a typical student that's interested in this major?
It's actually, in terms of the people who have contacted us about it, it's been a broad spectrum. But it tends to fall in two categories, and that's really why we created the Bachelor of Science and Bachelor of Arts.
Yes, I'd like to know about that.
The Bachelor of Science is really meant to be a degree where you get people to have the science, the math, and the engineering background that they need to succeed in a professional environment. But in addition, it brings in the ideas of, what are the relevant laws? What are the relevant public policies? What are the relevant human aspects? I mean, how do we identify user needs? How do we communicate with potential clients? All of these things go together to build that Bachelor of Science degree. So if you look at it, it's really a set of 9 courses, it's a set of 25 courses, about 9 of which have a math, science, engineering focus. Another 5 have more of a humanities focus, and the last are really independent projects. Because what we've seen is the way people learn best is give people a project, give people a goal, and in working to the goal, they actually can learn a lot of the things, but in a non-traditional way. On the other hand, that non-traditional way is an awful lot like the way that people really have to do things in the real world. It's, when you get out of school, it's not you're going back and taking a series of classes again, but what you're doing is you're discovering a lot of things on your own that are relevant to the particular thing that you're working on.
Now, how are you recruiting students into this program?
Well, to be honest, the first year recruiting is happening by itself. We're going to have more students than we were originally planning on dealing with. Part of this reason is we can still let freshmen come into it, and we're clearly seeing a backlog of freshmen who are interested in doing this, and then we have the incoming class. But even there, we're looking at a very different way of bringing people into the program. It's not that you come to Creighton, you spend 1 or 2 years working on the general courses and then say, this is really where I'd like to settle in. What we're doing is we're looking for people who really are seeing this is an idea that I've had all along. This is a passion of mine, and what I want to do is I want to follow through on this passion. And so entry to the program is actually much more like the entry to the honors program, that we're having an essay that you're going to write in the beginning, but what I think is even more fun is we're sending out a kit with a solar cell, a resistor, and an LED lamp, and giving it to the students in an envelope and say, we're not going to tell you how to do this, But what we want you to do is hook these three things up, get the light bulb to light up, and take a picture of it, and that's part of your application. So the real idea is getting people to use the resources around them. It's a doable problem, but it's also something to make you think, and it's also something so that students know what they're getting into when they're starting our program.
Marvelous. An amazing program at Creighton University. And when we come back, we'll zero in and focus a little bit more on one of those programs. In an effort to learn more about one of our specific programs at Creighton, I've invited Dr. John Chalice. He is the professor of biology and he is the director of the environmental science program. Please tell me about the environmental science program.
I'd be happy to, Joyce. The program started in 1991 and it was inspired by interest among colleagues in different departments to try and do something together, truly interdisciplinary. So currently we have 15 core faculty from 6 different departments that span the natural sciences and sociology, political science, philosophy, and we think Jay Leiter is going to join us in communications. That's a plug there. But so we're a rather broad and diverse group. Mm-hmm. The program is grounded in the natural sciences. Our students are required to take a curriculum of introductory courses in chemistry, biology, and atmospheric science. And then they supplement with some additional core and what are called areas of specialization. Now, Dr. Cherney talked to you sort of broadly about those areas. I'll flesh that out just a bit more. So the component that strongly involves atmospheric science and physical science is called global environmental systems. And that gets into how the world works at a very basic physical level, and climatology, physical oceanography, that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then the second track is called organismal and population ecology. There's a large contributing set of classes from biology, are sort of the environmental side of what we do in biology. And then we have this third track, as Mike said, that's the society interface with the environment. Mm-hmm. And we have courses in environmental policy, sociology, demographics, which is human population change, environmental ethics, and a new course in rural sustainability that Dr. Dilley teaches, and a course that Jay Leiter teaches in communications in the environment.
The young people in our high schools, how are they learning about this major? Is the way we're teaching science in the high schools changing so that they immediately evolve to want to come into this major?
I think some of both. I think it's quite variable out there what opportunities they have to take an environmental science course in high school. And the larger high schools do very often offer earth science or environmental science, but we can't presume that for all our incoming students. But I do think that we have a fairly unique set of students in our science majors taking environmental science. I think they self-identify with this program, some only after they arrive here and are exposed to new ideas, new thinking. Others come in with a clear vision, mission. This is what they want to do in life. And so, it really is a blend.
What are some of the careers that they'll have when they graduate with this?
It's really fascinating. We've been doing some tracking of those students. And in the 20 years and roughly 200 graduates, we know that roughly 50% go on to earn either master's or PhDs, and approximately 25% do health profession degrees, and then a variety of other things that they're doing with their degree. And they're working in fields as broad as oceanography, geoscience and groundwater hydrology. They do climatology. One works up in northern Alberta, and others in Fairbanks, Alaska right now doing that work. Toxicology.
Give me an example for
yeah.
What are some, like in climatology,
okay.
What do they do? What's their job?
Well, I'll take the, Chris Heimster is a grad who went on to do a master's and PhD at University of Wyoming, and then a postdoc at Colorado State. He now works in Fairbanks, and he's working above the Brooks Range for some of his work with snowpack and looking at how that changes seasonally, interannually, budgets of energy in and out. The high northern latitudes are changing very rapidly right now, what's called the disappearing cryosphere. And of course you may know that the glaciers are receding, ice is melting off the ice cap, and he's part of that story, putting the threads together to help us understand better what's going on.
What are your students working on?
My current students One I just had a master's student defend on Friday. He's been working with me on coastal ecology, something we'll see in an upcoming video segment. And his project was to put together remote sensing data that we collected with the University of Nebraska in a joint aircraft mission in coastal reserves between the Gulf Coast and the Mid-Atlantic. And he's looking specifically at salt marsh vegetation and how they differ in different tidal regimes and different climatologies. So this is the Creighton University Coastal and Estuarine Ecology class, and we've been on the road now for about a week and a half. We left Omaha on May 17th. Last week we worked in West Florida on Apalachicola and St. Joseph's Bays, part of the NOAA Research Reserve System. Today we'll be out on the Florida Keys Marine Sanctuary, Lou Key Reef, and this is an outdoor classroom. There's no better way to show students ecology than to take them out on a coral reef. There's more biodiversity per acre there than just about any other habitat on the world, and it's a very productive and important marine system, obviously critical to the Keys as a holistic ecosystem.
As if you would just keep your eyes open and watch for those guys. Don't try and catch them. They are poisonous. They will sting you. If you don't know what they look like, there's a sticker right here on the helm that you can take a look at one.
While we're out at the reef, we're also going to do a few measurements today. We have a multi-sensor sonde, which will be dropped at each station to record data. It does it on its own. It will be recording salinity, pH, oxygen, depth, turbidity, and probably a few other things. We can simultaneously measure about 10 properties of water, and we'll do that at each of 3 dive sites. We'll also be taking plankton samples to look at the small critters in the water, but our main focus will be the bottom community and the reef system.
The reef here is no more than 30 feet deep. That would be our maximum depth. That gives us unlimited bottom time. We don't have to worry. It's a very safe place to dive with students. We don't have to worry about the decompression charts because we never exceed them with these 3 dives. So 3 dives in the water, about 3 hours of water time altogether.
Some of the most important work that we're doing is very simple. It's simply photographic documentation of the habitats. We have several underwater cameras. In fact, I think altogether 5 or 6 different devices, and we're able to very easily and readily, by picking the right conditions, take photographic assessments of the conditions of these different marine communities we're studying. They're also learning techniques in water chemistry and water sampling that are useful for the overall research objectives of our center. And then next week, when we get them into the marshes up to their knees in mud, that will be another very useful part of this process. I am seeing new regenerating corals, especially the Montastria annularis, that star coral. It sort of grows, it's a greenish brown cover, and it is coming back here. That stuff was bleached heavily in some events in the 90s and early 2000s, and at least that is good to see some regenerating coral here. Who knows what lies ahead, but you know, of all the areas down here, this is one of the healthiest reefs. Fish, really big rainbows. I think the best thing I saw was that school of young midnight parrotfish.
Those parrots.
I've never seen a school of midnight parrotfish.
That large like that.
Yeah.
I saw that too.
There were some really huge parrotfish, and
oh, I got a sweet big old school of parrotfish.
Yeah. I would say I saw the blue one, a couple parrotfish that were at least a meter in length. Anybody see any grouper? Huh? Nassau, black grouper? No? Ever see these harlequin bass? They're down on the sand often. Little stranded bass. Schools of blue tang today? Yeah. John Ollie, and he is now a certified diver. He's joined the ranks of the diving community. And Danielle has just received paperwork making her a dive instructor, which is a pretty significant achievement for a student of her age, and means good things ahead for her.
So, 2 really big green moray eels. We saw 2 fowlfish. I saw some big gray angelfish, some queen angelfish. Yeah, I got some big barracuda. Me and Carla swam next to a huge tarpon. It's probably the biggest tarpon we've seen since we've been here.
So this was a really good second dive. We saw some nicely regenerating mountain star coral, a species that's really important to this reef. It's taking quite a hit from bleaching and diseases, but showing some evidence of coming back nicely. Also saw some elkhorn coral. This is now a federally endangered species. There's a lot of effort to try and bring this coral species back, and in a couple places here on Looe Key, it's doing very well. It's not back to anything like it was 20, 30 years ago, but at least there's some nice growth, and we got some good photo documentation of that.
There's some turf algae that overgrows and is considered bowed algae, but not a lot. I think there's enough herbivorous fish on this reef to keep it pretty clean enough.
Dive number 3.
Last dive. Got to make this a good one. Maybe another year before I'm back in the Keys to dive with the class, so got to make this one count. We'll see you topside.
Had a shark swimming pretty close next to me, about 10 feet away. That scared me pretty good.
So, favorite fish of the day? What was your favorite fish? Your shark?
Blacktip, no doubt.
Blacktip.
He's going to be at dinner later on.
Who saw the Maury?
I saw him.
Wow, that's great.
So what we're doing is we're filtering the water that we collected this morning from the reef, and we're filtering out the chlorophyll, and chlorophyll is an indicator of phytoplankton, and it's a common test to see phytoplankton levels are reflected by the chlorophyll levels. And
this is a YSI multi-instrument sonde. In shorthand, it takes a lot of different parameters.
Secchi transparency, chlorophyll A content, CDOM, nitrate, temperature, conductivity, salinity, dissolved oxygen, pH, turbidity, all that good stuff.
So you
cool.
You follow the canal all the way around.
Yep.
You'll see these markers here.
Yeah, we know those. Green nails.
Yep.
And instead of going this way, you just make the right and follow down.
Instead of going around here, go up this channel. You go under the bridge, and when you go under the bridge
yesterday morning, right?
When you go under the bridge, watch this shoal. Get over here to this side.
So there's been a lot of attempts to protect coastal wetlands, both in the U.S. and internationally, and it is really important. We've lost a lot of really good habitat for fisheries and for shoreline protection. When mangroves are lost, that is a loss for the whole coastal system. Miami and Miami Beach used to be primarily a mangrove swamp, and that was all cleared to make that marvelous metropolitan area, but at a loss of natural systems. Fortunately, Florida still has a substantial amount of mangrove, and now they're well protected.
I also noticed in the most recent issue of Creighton magazine, they reserved the last page for you, and it's called The Last Word, Reflections on the BP Oil Spill. Why is this topic so relevant and deserving of the last page, the last word?
Okay. Well, I think it illustrates several key points that relate to what we're talking about, and broadly to what you and Dr. Cherney talked about in terms of the central role of energy in our society. But in a broader sense, what happened in this tragedy in the Gulf is an example of outcomes that in some ways are predictable when we're not taking care of business properly, and the human element. But it starts with our rapacious appetite for resources, whether it is energy or water or precious metals,
oil.
Gold at $1,400 an ounce today. And the environmental problems we face and the milieu that I wrote about in this essay, it does condense to 3 basic interacting components of this environmental crisis. That is human population growth, the per capita consumption of resources, this broad array of resources that society is dependent upon, and the environmental impacts of that resource use, whether it's in the extraction phase, the production phase, or the discard and abandon phase. All of those come together to create the potent forces that we are now confronted with. And in this essay, I first laid out what went into the mix of things that led to this acute tragic crisis in the Gulf. But my conclusion is that more broadly, it's not so much the questions of technology and science that are unanswered right now in this environmental crisis, but our inability to reconcile the human dimension with those questions. And that's where I think Creighton can really play a major role, in that we have this very strong Jesuit inquiry tradition that is not just a focus on science. You could say it is truly an interdisciplinary look at the world. And it includes philosophy, it includes religions and comparative religious studies, and it includes ethics and communications and sociology, policy and political science, history. All of these things that are at the center of our liberal arts core in this college also contribute to a worldview that is so critical if we have any hope of addressing and solving these problems.
You end your essay with, "Heaven help us."
I knew that was a forceful thing to say, but as I look at what we face, it will take divine inspiration, I'm afraid, and also human motivation and ingenuity, but not just the science and the technology. Not that those are easy parts of the equation, but the harder parts of the equation are to get people involved in, and through these other Jesuit styled inquiries, I think that therein lies the answer.
Thank you. Ben Franklin, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Creighton is indeed doing its part. Thank you for joining us.